Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the Quantum Connection podcast. Vanessa and I are so excited to have an international guest today who hails from the beautiful locale of Crete. Cyprus, and his name is Andreas Christou, and he identifies first and foremost as a human, which I love. And he has a master's degree as a movement specialist, a bachelor's in nutrition. He is basically an expert at helping his clients with improving their overall lifestyle with a holistic approach. And he calls himself a movement and lifestyle optimization coach. Thank you for being here today, Andreas, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me both on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So happy to have you on. I love all your Instagram posts and following your story and just seeing you embody the lifestyle and how you help guide people. If they follow along, they can learn so much. And honestly, the way you move is just amazing. It's such a cool thing to watch. And it's helped me learn a little bit. I've done some training with someone else with functional movement, and it's like the flow, and we should always be in movement. And I'm definitely curious to ask you about that. But first, I want to ask you, what got you into this lifestyle? Because everybody has a reason and a journey of why they come to this lifestyle. And because I know
Yeah,
you not only include movement, you not only
yeah.
include nutrition, but you're talking about, environmental and circadian rhythms
Mhm.
and circadian biology. So you're
Mhm.
taking it way deeper than most go. So how did you land here?
Well, I guess my passion comes, from the beginning, from a movement and fitness perspective, because my journey started when I was 14 years old as an obese child, and I wanted to make a change. So that's how my journey began initially into health overall, like even caring about my health. Of course, at the beginning, it was mainly focused around the aesthetics because, I was being bullied at school and I didn't have any serious health problems, really. I was just overweight.
Yeah.
And as soon as I, got rid of that weight, and I got in the best shape of my life, but I wasn't necessarily healthy internally, but on the outside, I looked great. I had the six pack, like I was looking like I would feel great, but I didn't necessarily feel optimal inside. Many years went by in this way, and I was basically living life in this bodybuilding lifestyle. And of course, I was spending a lot of time under artificial lighting and close to non-native electromagnetic fields from Wi-Fi's, computers, phones, from studying for so many years. And basically, my partner as well, Tina, she used to have like an autoimmune condition when she was younger, and it started to get like a lot worse when we were studying. And of course, that led to us, to dive deep down a rabbit hole to try and figure things out by ourselves, because when we went into the medical paradigm, they gave her, medications, and that made symptoms way worse. She had way worse symptoms than her actual autoimmune condition from the medications. So then we came off the medications by ourselves, and we tried to fix everything by ourselves. So they dove deep down this rabbit hole, uh, with everything that you can imagine to do with health, from fasting, nutrition, lifestyle, environment, everything to do that you can imagine that can impact one's well-being and fitness. And so this led me to try and understand that actually, no, it's not just the one thing, but it's actually multifactorial. You can't just pay attention to what you're putting inside of your body, because we were actually eating pretty clean, over the years. And Tina was plant-based her whole life. I was plant-based with her for 5 years. At one point, I only transitioned to an animal-based diet 2 years ago.
Mm.
So
Wow.
this is like when my entire life actually shifted, like truly towards health and vitality. Vitality is when I actually switched more to an animal-based diet. Although I did feel that I was quite well on a plant-based diet too. It's just that things started to go kind of strange when I was on the plant-based diet towards the end. Like I had like a feeling that my teeth were getting really loose. My hair was starting to,
Mhm.
also as well, like fall out. I would feel that I'm getting very lethargic, and also that I started to get this excess bloating, and I got weight gain even though I was exercising the same as before, and I was taking into account the amount of energy that I was consuming as well, because I had that knowledge. And so even though I was following all of those things, like my health was deteriorating. So I was losing my health. We managed to recover Tina completely from her autoimmune condition through fasting, circadian rhythms training, and everything like this. And that was incredible. And that taught me so much. And then afterwards, we both started to transform our health together. And now both of us, we're in the best health that we've ever been. We're the most tanned that we've ever been, the most jacked that we've ever been, and the most we can perform the best, in life in general. And there is no like coincidence that being tanned and healthy and feeling vibrant and eating an animal-based diet and all of these things, that actually that's why we feel our best.
Well, you guys certainly
Yeah.
look amazing. And
Yeah.
it's not
Thank you.
only that, I mean, but you radiate sort of like the
Mhm.
loving energy that I always am drawn to, right? You can just feel that goodness in your hearts and how much you really care. So it all comes together, right? Because I do think there's a spiritual aspect too, as well, to the light, right? That like I like in the beginning, you talked about illuminating. And so in that sense, I think you're referring to like illuminating the truth and what's true about human health and kind of busting some of these modern day myths about the dangers of sun and how like the vegan thing, all that kind of stuff, right? Plant-based, they call it now, whatever they call it. And so, but the light also in your heart, right? So I can just feel that in you too. And you're such lovely humans and you're gorgeous too. I mean, you're like physically so gorgeous. So it's so fun to watch you guys. And I'm can't trying to think what my actual question was. But what you were saying how so when Tina switched to animal based, that's when she started to resolve or her autoimmune, or was it before that?
No, she started to get better before that because we addressed many of the environmental factors.
Mhm.
So we started to, get rid of all of the things that we use in the home, all the toxic substances. We stopped using deodorant, we stopped using shampoo, we stopped using hand wash, everything that you basically put on your body or that is toxic, that you can smell, or that's in the environment, or even clothing, things like this. All this kind of stuff, we basically reduced dramatically from our life. So our toxic load, our bucket started to empty, and that gave room for healing. Because if we are constantly giving energy towards detoxification, then we are not allowing our body, to heal. And or in general, it's not even detoxification. It's just like your body's trying to literally survive, to get rid of those, store those toxins, whether that's in fat tissue or whether that is in the water in your body. Because what the body does when you are exposed to a lot of toxins from your environment and environmental stressors, it stores a lot of water, so puffiness under the skin and bloating. And that happens because the solution to pollution is dilution. And so, like, if you
Mhm.
dilute like the toxin, it's not so toxic to the body anymore until it can see that you can handle that toxic load, and then it can start to put more of it into your system or to release it from your fat. So one big reason why people lose a lot of weight or why they lose fat when they, go on detox, or they really focus on, eliminating toxins from their environment. So stopping the intox, so it allows the detox, to
Mhm.
take place. This is the way that we're able to, lose weight and to lose like a ton of inflammation from the body as well. So yeah, we did all of that kind of stuff, and we addressed the light environment as well. We started grounding, and we started spending more time in the sun, and that's actually what led us to move from like Finland to Cyprus as well, because we were in Cyprus before we went to Costa Rica, and then we were in Costa Rica for a while, and then from Costa Rica we came back here because we realized that Costa Rica wasn't the place for us. Maybe we can get into that a little bit.
Yeah,
Ooh, I'm
that's so
interested about that.
interesting. I want to know that absolutely, because of course
Yeah.
it's got this mystique and everyone's so excited about Costa Rica, but I want to know more about that. But I just want to add like a little side note here, if that's okay, about toxins, is that there's also the emotional stagnation and toxicity of people
Oh
who are
yeah.
their mindset or their unresolved traumas or their bad relationships. That'll also add puffiness and weight on because your body is basically not able to discharge all that negative energy. So I appreciate you mentioning that toxicity. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us
Absolutely. And
about go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to input on that about the emotional and the psychological aspect, how that, how we do store emotions in the body and in the muscles. and how that, when you have tight tissue, obviously tight tissue doesn't accept blood flow very well. And blood flow obviously carries oxygen and nutrients there and energy. So, if you are chronically tight there, now that tissue is getting chronically tighter and tighter. So there are many ways to release tight tissue, whether that is dealing with the emotional state that got you there in the first place, or you can indirectly affect that through exercise as well. So exercise is a form of release of, emotional like discharge, or you express yourself through your body. You allow the emotions and the
Yes.
feelings to flow through your body. If you look at animals when they're in a fight or when they are, under attack or threat, they just shake it off afterwards. And that's literally what we are meant to be doing too, but we actually don't do that.
Right.
And we go into more of a dorsal type of state, more of a shutdown, because that's what our society has taught us. And then that makes us store emotions, and we just press them further and further down all the time. And then that makes us more and more, like tight as people. Then that means that our lymphatic system is not moving, our blood flow is not moving, we get brain fog, our detoxification is not working. And when we are in that state of mind, if we're chronically in this fight and flight state, of course, we cannot detoxify the body, because detoxification does not occur in a sympathetic state. It only occurs in a parasympathetic state.
Wow.
So this is why we need to make sure that we address, yes, the emotional, psychological aspect as well as the physiological, because they're all intertwined.
Yep. And that's why we have so many constipated people too, among other reasons.
Yeah. You have to let things flow, let things out, right? The emotions have to flow. We can't have stagnation, right? I feel like stagnation is like that same word, right? When you're tight and everything's stagnant, the emotions are stagnant,
Exactly.
constipation, stagnation, everything's just like, yeah. And I love that you said that about the parasympathetic, that's when you detox, when you're in that more of that relaxed state, that rest and digest state. So that's amazing. I want to piggyback on a few things you said, like that you were an obese child, and look at the way you look now. So genetics, obviously, whatever, it's not our destiny. Same thing with, your partner and her autoimmunity and how she's recovered. Amazing. And I also like that you said that you looked healthy, but you weren't actually healthy, because I felt that in my own journey. You don't know my health history, but I was very obese as well at one time. And then I went on Weight Watchers. And even though I looked healthy after losing all of that weight, and I kind of looked healthier then in some ways with muscle mass and things like that. But I was chronically, under eating, not supporting my hormones with fats, like so many things I was doing incorrectly. And I looked healthy, but then all of a sudden chronic disease set in. So it's so important for people to understand this, is that even though you might look a certain way, that's not 100% depiction of health. Right?
Yes.
And I want to hammer that home, because that's not, people want that. They want to look good, and it's great to look good, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is how you feel, and, your health and your energy and, your hormones and all the other things. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yes, back to what we talked about before at the beginning, before we came online, was that we have to make sure that we have a stocked up battery energy reserves inside of the body before we can endure hard things. Because when we are constantly in a calorie deficit, of course, our body is more likely to be in a chronically cortisol elevated state. And when we are in that state all the time, obviously, cortisol, breaks things down, it's a catabolic hormone. So then that means that everything is breaking down, right? So we're never anabolic. So we're never rebuilding, regenerating the body. So we get burnt out very easily. And so it allows things, diseases and mitochondrial issues to occur. Of course, when you're in a calorie deficit, it does in a way prevent metabolic crowding, which is, a good thing. But at the same time, many other processes don't have the energy to take place, which is healing and repair. And so, your body is constantly breaking down the fat. Yes. And another dangerous thing when you are losing fat, if you are losing a ton of fat, and let's say you were 160 kilos, and then you go down to 100 kilos, and you lose that 60 kilos in a very short period of time, there is a huge danger in the fact that you release a ton of toxins into your system that your body wasn't ready to handle. And so a lot of times you might actually develop autoimmune-like conditions because of that. You might store heavy metals or plastics or mold or all these kind of things in your brain, or in your digestive system, and your immune system becomes overreactive then and then you become allergic to certain foods. So it's like a whole cascade, of things. So this is why, weight loss, even though it's nice to occur, it has to be done in a very wise way. We not need to understand the person's circumstance before we endure that journey, before we apply more stress on the system overall.
Yes, so wise, so important. And it is a lot of where we store our toxins is in our fat stores. And all of a sudden you
Yeah,
just let it all out. Then it's like, wait, where's it going? What's it doing? And is
yeah,
that person's redox potential really high or really low? Can
yeah,
they handle that? How much stressors can they handle is all really important.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
definitely think that me losing weight quickly like that was a part of why I developed autoimmunity.
yeah,
It really
yeah,
correlated and lined up. So
yeah.
and the people are like always confused when I tell them that. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely a part of the story. It lined up. So yeah, it's interesting.
Can I
So
ask a question? When you lost the weight and you did the Weight Watchers, were you more like towards keto, or was it just like
oh,
high carb and low fat?
high carb, low fat, totally low
Yeah,
fat. I mean, I did all the cuts. Like, I mean, I didn't know anything about health and nutrition then. I was like
yeah,
spray butter over real butter. Like I did it total, like it was really like, I would never do that now. I was like adding
uh-huh,
to the chemical load in my body. I mean, I didn't know
yeah,
anything. I just was
yeah,
like, overweight mom. And I was like,
mm,
okay, what do? We go to Weight Watchers and we start running. I
yeah,
started chronic cardio as well. I was running a lot.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I run up running marathons and really, really depleting my body in a
Oh, yeah.
massive amount of way. Yeah, really
Yeah, yeah. I
depleting.
mean, running is one of those things where I tell people to be a bit cautious with, because it's
Mhm.
one of those things that you can really overdo very easily. Because once you're going and you're in that flow state, you can kind of override your body's nervous system
Oh yeah.
state. You can just keep going. You can get that runner's high. You can overcome that because of the hormones that are produced and the endorphins during the running. But then
Mhm.
if you're doing something else, it's way more difficult, to achieve that level. Let's say if you're lifting weights, you can't just lift weights forever. You just have to put them
Mhm.
down at one point. So with endurance type of exercise, even though it's incredible for mitochondrial health, and aerobic respiration, it can obviously be overdone, as well, just like with anything, and it adds to your overall stress bucket. So again, like, even though you would think it's reducing from your stress bucket because you're actually, using more energy and that's aiding your fat loss, it's actually adding to your stress bucket, because it's now elevating your cortisol chronically if you are running as well, like every day, if you're not having any rest days, especially.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I was big on no rest days. Do more, do harder. Yeah, totally. No, so
Yeah.
running, I lived on chronic cortisol, 5 hours of
Stress.
sleep. Yeah, get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and work out and then go for a run after teaching all day. I mean, I did
Wow.
everything like kind of crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
depleted my body that way.
Wow.
But
So,
let's talk
so
about that. Well, go ahead. You have something,
well,
Heather?
I was just curious, Andreas, like it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, what you do is you really probably have a more individualized approach versus like a cookie
Yeah.
cutter approach. And so
Yeah.
walk
Mhm.
us through how you will onboard someone or how you will assess them. And then you are going to tailor what kind of interventions you give your clients based on their specific metabolic picture, or how does it work?
Yeah, exactly like that, just as you described. So basically, I asked them about their background, any history, and what was their, have they got any problems with their immune system, with their joints? What was their lifestyle like, or what is it currently like? Have they lived in, mold? How much stress do they have in their life? What's their sleep like? All of these things are things that I always ask everybody. It doesn't matter whether you come to me for exercise or nutrition or just lifestyle. We have to address those things because we cannot perform our best during exercise if those other things are not taken into consideration. So I cannot, you know, just ask them, how was your training before and how are your joints, and just focus on the training without saying, maybe with the reason why your joints hurts are not so much because of your exercise, but more of your lack of sleep, the lack of good nutrition, the lack of sunlight, the lack of grounding, all this stuff, which is helping you to tolerate more pain and, to have reduced inflammation in the body. So yeah, this is the way that I approach individuals. So for, let's say you come to me with an autoimmune-like condition, and you want to do a diet for that, then obviously we're going to cover everything. How did you get into that state in the first place? How long has it been going on. Of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving like medical advice, but I'm able to help alleviate an individual's symptoms through lifestyle intervention. And that's why the people are coming to me. So we're trying to use a holistic approach to get people into the best state possible.
I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. It's great. Such a holistic approach, brings everything together. It's perfect. Yeah. What about, let's talk a little bit about like movement, because I'm interested in that. Obviously that's what I see you doing a lot on Instagram. And like I said, I see you in the proper environment, I would say, for working out. Like you're always outside, grounded under the sun. And I always say to people, if they work out, inside gyms, they're actually losing energy to their environment. Let's work out in a place where we can gain energy from our environment. So talk a little bit about that. Is that your suggestion that people take their workouts outside and ditch the gym? Is that?
But I also want to say just really quickly, like people who are listening, I want them to follow you on Instagram,
Oh,
Andreas.
yeah.
Your movements, I was like, that doesn't look that hard. I can do that. And then I'm like, yeah, no, that's really hard. It looks so easy. And then I'm like, it's so hard.
Well, like, thank you for trying them out. That's awesome. And I appreciate, putting it out there. And yeah, for sure. Well, basically, movement in general, it depends what kind of movement you want to do, right? And where you want to take it. But if you want to think about an individual who spends the majority of their life indoors, like they work in an office and they go from their home to the car, to the office, to the supermarket, to the gym, back to the car and back home. Well, that person is never going to see the sun and is never going to see the bare feet on the ground either, unless they make an effort, to wake up that tiny bit earlier, to put effort into making it a lifestyle. And so this is all things which I highly promote, that if you have that type of life, you take the ownership and you make the time to be able to do these things. And if you cannot, we will find a way to do that, to meet individuals where they're at, because I understand that everybody doesn't have the same circumstances. So we have to start with the lowest hanging fruit. So if, let's say, a person, they can't do all those things that I just mentioned, if the only thing they can do is wear blue light blocking glasses, great. Let's start with that. Let's wear yellow glasses in the daytime when you're indoors behind glass and under artificial blue lights, and the red ones in the evening if you have to look at screens or have to have in your house lighting which is inappropriate after dark, because at dark, obviously, it's supposed to be dark. It's not supposed to be blue. And the last thing that our eye is meant to see is red, because that's how nature intended it. And that's how our melatonin stays protected and we are able to release it in the evening. And so knowing and understanding all of this, knowing and understanding circadian rhythms, and that why it's so critically important for our hormones, for our energy levels, for our recovery processes and sleeping right and performing well, then we can understand like why it's important to exercise and move outdoors, because being outside is also a circadian rhythm setter. Obviously, the sun is giving us information about what time of the day it is and what day of the month it is and what time of this, what season are we in as well. So we're getting all of this information just from the sun and also from the ground as well. So the more information that we can receive, we can pick up, like from grounding, the sun, and the temperature, the more our body can be in sync with the season. So the mitochondria can operate, the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, can operate as it should, when it should. And if we're giving it the right nutrition, it can respond according to that in the most optimal way, without crushing the mitochondrial functions. And so this is why I tell a lot of people that they should move and exercise outdoors. It's mainly for the individuals who are having these type of lifestyles, who are spending the majority of their life indoors, 90% of their life indoors. If you are an individual who spends 90% of their time outdoors, you do all the good stuff, you wake up with the sunrise, you go outside, you get grounded, you eat your breakfast, you basically spend as much time outdoors as possible in the sun without wearing sunglasses, without wearing sunscreens, and so on. And you go for 1 hour to the gym. I don't think that's necessarily detrimental because it's all about the accumulative load. It's not black and white, because the body has this battery, like we talked about. You can refill that battery and you can empty that battery. So it's just all about how much reserve do you have to give available. If you do not have any reserve, then obviously you're going to go into burnout very quickly and your body's going to get fried. And this is why, you see a lot of things happen in blue light environments. It's not necessarily only in gyms, but it's anywhere like stadiums and malls and hospitals and all the places where there is high, like non-native electromagnetic fields and lots of artificial blue lighting. So this is where we see, many issues occur, like heart attacks, different kind of strokes, epilepsy, or what do you call it? Ligament injuries, non-contact injuries that occur due to dehydration of the tissues. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. So all of this, together, the environment in total is going to determine where do we take our movement and where do we take our exercise. Do you have room, leeway to be able to eat that donut, or do you not? It's like, this is what I compare it to. It's like the junk food, right? Or the treat, as people call it, even though it's not a treat. You're actually doing harm to your body. But, if you call it a treat, let's say, I'm just trying to be like, so people, the majority of individuals can understand, is that, basically going to the gym in a blue light environment is like eating a treat, like eating an ice cream. But then let's say, do you have room to do that? Is the majority of your diet 90% of the time good? Then you can get away with eating an ice cream and you're not going to like destroy your gut lining from the gluten and the sugar and everything like this and cause systemic inflammation and so on.
Yeah, that's a great response. I really like that analogy. It's a good one. Yeah. It's a good one. Yeah. So there's a little nuance, right? As they would say, right?
Yes. It's not black and white.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of individuals, like in the circadian health space and the quantum health space, they want to make it very black and white. And I'm a little bit against that, for the reason being that we need to meet everybody where they're at. Not everybody can change their entire lifestyles and do everything outdoors. We have to do everything that we can as much as possible. In fact, what I tell people is the best approach is if you build yourself a home gym and you get like a full-on squat rack with cables and barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells and bands, and you have the most awesome workouts, because now you've got no excuse to miss a workout because it's at home and you've got more time. You don't need to travel to the gym. You don't need to pay gym membership. You can have circadian appropriate lighting if you have to have lighting on. So you can have infrared lights on and UVA lights on. That's what I did before. Before I left Cyprus, I built home gym. I had infrared and UVA lights. I put them on in the daytime. I had the windows open as well. So all of these ways that we can bring in the natural light and mimic the natural sunlight when the sun is up. Obviously, when the sun is down, we don't want UVA light on. We only want the infrared one on. So we have to always consider what the sun is doing. But the best approach is definitely to build a home gym. That's my biggest advice that I would give anyone.
Do you actually help people, like you mentioned, the specific types of weights? You help guide people in doing that?
Yes. So basically, I tell people that, you need to just buy this bulb, and then like what kind of equipment they need, or if they even want any equipment, because people can exercise without equipment. Right? And that's why I'm teaching a lot of what I'm teaching through my page, because I want to give people the tools through their body being the best gym that exists ever. You can do everything with it, especially if you want to take it more holistic. Of course, when you talk about building muscle and you want to take a more bodybuilding style approach, we are now diving into a different area. Everything has its time and place. So resistance training in the form of, isolation exercises such as bicep curls, bench press, shoulder press, all the classic exercises that you would see in a gym. They have their time and place if you have a specific goal, or if you are even trying to rehabilitate from something, because my specialization is in rehabilitation. And so, for example, if someone has a knee injury and they have surgery, it's very useful to have a leg extension machine and a hamstring curl machine, because that's literally the only thing they can do before they can squat or lunge. And it's very hard to do bodyweight exercises that are able to meet their body where it's at to accelerate recovery as fast as possible.
And you can help people virtually with all those kinds of things. You don't have to be there watching them and whatnot. Okay.
No, because I show them, I give them instructional videos, so I record them myself,
Ah.
and then I'm able to show them exactly how to do the exercise, and they can take their phone with them or their laptop, and I can watch them live do it, and I can give them feedback if
Oh,
it's
that's so
correct.
cool how adaptable it is. So I love that you're not like it has to only be natural movement, like the people who say you can't use machines and whatnot. Your approach is more like you use whatever could be the most useful
Supportive.
Yeah.
intervention, right? You don't have a bias against, okay, that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, I basically take a little bit of everything. Over the years, I have done so many different things in my fitness journey. So
Ah,
I can tell you how I got into this more holistic type of movement if you want to, if
sure.
you want to.
Yes. What was it?
So basically, my first years when I began, it was more bodybuilding style training because that's all I knew. I was focused on body transformation. I became really good at that. I bulked up and I cut down weight multiple times over a 7-year period on purpose, as a focus to build muscle during the bulking phase and then cutting down to see how much progress I have made once I have removed the fat from my body. And I've become extremely good at this. So I actually help people in body transformation as well, because this is an area of expertise of mine because I've been doing it for so many years. And after that, when I met Tina, she was more into this functional style training, yoga, and mobility style training, and more endurance type. And of course, that was totally out of my league, my lane. And we started doing that. I was super stiff, and I realized the importance of these things once I started doing them because I noticed that actually helped my gym training and my weight training. I could perform better when I was doing the more holistic type of movements, and then that made me realize, okay, so we actually need to be doing a little bit of everything, not just the
Yes.
one thing. So even if you're a bodybuilder, it's useful to do mobility training and to do cardiovascular training and everything like this, because it's always worth being able to move well. What good is it if you can just look good, but you can't move well if you're not functional, You might
Yes.
have the strength, but you're not capable.
I
Yeah.
just love that story because it's like where I tend to go with some of the things in my head. Andreas is like, oh, you have this beautiful wife. She brought the feminine flow into your masculine, like, oomph, and helped balance it out, right? Love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And it's really funny because my partner Tina, she was very like driven in the past, like more let's say, yeah, like she was very much like driven and I was more chill. So we kind of like balanced each other out, even though you describe it the other way around and the physical aspect.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in the mental aspect, we were different.
Okay.
Like she was more like the one who was like more disciplined than me, like getting things done. Like she would be like on top of things. And I was just like, oh no, everything is chill, everything is good. And then we kind of like shared and expanded our roles, and now we're both sort of more yin and yang, more balanced.
Well, that sounds perfect. That's exactly what you need in a partner, right? Have that yin and that yang and that balance. I love it. Yeah, I
You
love
don't
what you're
realize
saying.
it until years afterwards.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You don't realize it until years afterwards that
Oh,
was the right thing.
yes, yes, 100%. Yeah, I've learned that too with my training. Like, not that I'm really a big any fitness trainer or anything like that, but when I do train, I do like lift weights, but I also put mobility into it and different stretches. And it's a lot of not stagnant movements, more like a lot of oscillation and keeping the flow and keeping the movement going, which is something that I've learned, and then also adding in maybe a sprint here and there, not a 5 mile run, right? Or like, those kinds of things, to keep things going. And I there is a seasonality, which I wanted to ask you about two things. Seasonality when it comes to exercise, because I feel that in my own body with aligning my circadian biology. The wintertime is definitely a different season than the summertime when it comes to the way I
Yeah.
train and move my body. And so I wanted to ask you about that. And I also wanted to ask you about the mobility and the flow and why that's so important for the fascia and everything else, because I'm sure
Mm.
you could speak to that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the seasonal aspect of exercise, well, that really like just depends on the individual, right? Because like men and women are slightly different as well when we even just consider men and women, not even the seasons, like how we respond to exercise. And so that's very important to understand, and how we actually program our exercise, and we have to listen to our body. So if your body is like telling you, that you don't really feel like exercising, but you genuinely feel like that way, in a way that you feel drained, then it's good to listen to that, and take more rest. But if you just feel like, oh, I don't feel like exercising today, but you actually could exercise, then you probably should exercise, because, there is a fine line between being lazy and actually like listening to the true,
That's right.
listening to the true emotion, because, this is why some structure, some routine in your week is so important. So for example, if you normally train 5 days per week in the summer, and if you train 3 days in the winter, that's like a perfect balance, right? Because you're giving your body more resting time, even on those days when you don't feel like doing it, you still do it, but you know that you've got more resting time during the week overall.
Yeah.
So even if you don't get it during that day when you feel like it, if you do it, you've got more resting days in that week overall for your body to catch up. So it's very bio-individual. I feel very similar all year round, to be honest, when it comes to movement and training. I think you can stay more consistent with that the more tighter you are with your routine. So for example, the more you sync yourself with waking up with the sunrise and blocking the blue light and taking care of your environment, and limiting your toxin exposure, and taking care of your diet and changing your diet based on the seasons. If you do that, you can maintain high energy output during the daylight hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, the daylight hours, that's the most important part of this whole
Right. That you're
whole process.
you're active and exercising during daylight, no matter what time of year it is. But I hear you saying that in the
100%.
winter, you can lessen, you don't have to do, or your body is going to benefit maybe from a little bit less. And in the summer, because of the intensity of the light, the longer hours of daylight, you can have more opportunity for movement and exercise and intensity. Am I getting that?
Yeah, so your body's getting obviously more electrons from its environment during summertime versus wintertime.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends where you live as well. With cold exposure, that's why it's a really huge thing in the winter, because that helps to mimic the sun, the lack of the sunlight. So we need to do the cold to be able to preserve our mitochondrial health and to keep it in tip-top shape, and to be able to, generate that brown fat, increase our mitochondrial function, and increase the infrared light that we generate from the producing the heat from our body. But in the summertime, our body is dissipating more heat. It's generating a ton of infrared light. It's receiving a ton of infrared light. So now it's not under so much stress. Of course, UV light can be a stress in excess. So that's why you can easily overdo it as well. So this is why individuals shouldn't be spending like the whole day under the sun. Of course, you can be in the shade, but you can still be outdoors. We have to listen to our body. No other animal would stay in the sun the entire day. When they've had enough, they would go in the shade, and then they'd go back in the sun again. And the cycle repeats. Only as human things we can put something on our skin. And just because there is something on our skin, like sunscreen, we can stay the whole day out in the sun 8 hours just because we put that on. What do we think we are, gods or something? Like, this is the problem.
Yeah, that's right. We try to outdo the nature.
Outsmart nature. Yeah, exactly. And then when you wear the sunscreen, what happens is you don't even realize you don't get that pinkening response. If you're having one, you don't realize. And then this is when, you can run into trouble. But yeah, like if you watch animals, like I'll watch my, but I'm outside a lot in the, when it's warmer out, of course. And the dog always joins me, and he will lay in the sun, and then he will go in the shade when he gets hot. Like that's like animals are so much wiser than us, because they don't have this, I don't know what's the part of the brain, Heather, remind me, that, that helps them make decisions or whatever like that. They just listen to their instincts. They just do what they want to, what they should do based on their instincts. And it's like, follow the animals. They know what they're doing, or just, try to tap into that a little bit more.
Well,
It's not that we have it's not that we have something that blocks us, or makes us think that we should like spend more time in the sun. It's just that we have distractions right now in our modern world. That's the problem. We have something more important to do all the time. Something more important than being connected with nature or being outdoors.
Yeah.
If you, let's say, you didn't have any of the stresses of life, and you were a natural human living a natural life in a natural environment, and everything was natural that you did and nothing was artificial, you'd have no need to go anywhere but be in that present moment. And so
Mhm.
that would be the only moment that existed. So you'd be in no hurry and no rush to go anywhere. So you'd be connected with nature all the time. And this is the way that it's meant to be. But since we are not in that phase of life right now as a humanity overall, we need
Yeah.
to adapt to that. So what does that mean? It means that we actually need to try and create that natural environment from, our ancestral environment that was before in a modern environment while having all the conveniences that we get to enjoy.
Right.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
have to find a way to integrate nature in the context of our modern environment. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, before we run out of time, I really, really want to hear about what happened with Costa Rica and why you nixed that, you guys.
So, so yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? You hear a lot of people how moving to the equator is the number one best thing to improve your health, especially, if you have some serious conditions because of the environment being so healing. So basically, we endured a very hard travel to get there from Cyprus to Costa Rica, right? The flying was absolutely brutal. So it took more than 24 hours
Ooh.
to arrive there. So multiple
Mhm.
flight changes, stressful running in the airport, almost missing flights, all this kind of stuff. And once we arrived there, it wasn't so easy. We kind of lived it more in the jungle, and we had basically no transportation method to get to the city center or the coastal area. And so the first week was like a hell because like we were walking so much. I promise you not, we lost so much weight, like both of us, just because we were walking so much. But anyway, at least we got our movement in. But by the time it was time to exercise during the day, we felt totally drained, like we
Yeah.
couldn't exercise.
Wow.
So basically, yeah, that was one part of it. After that, we managed to move away from there and find somewhere more coastal, close to the city center, which was perfect. So it was right on the beach, opposite from the road, literally a road separating the house from the beach. And that was absolutely perfect. We stayed there for around 2.5 months. And yeah, basically, like we noticed that the environment there, they also obviously have the way that they wire the electricity there, they have all the wires running above you on the
Ah,
street. So it's like a ton of wires, like hundreds of wires running, not even
Mm.
just like a couple, but hundreds. And even a person died there when we were there, actually, from a motorbike, because one of the cables was dangling down and they passed and it was raining and they got electrocuted from
oh,
the bike.
wow.
Mm.
So
Ugh.
like the condition there of the infrastructure is a little bit not so optimal, and that you can feel that the electric fields produced from those wires is very, very high. And those wires are everywhere, going to all the neighborhoods, passing, because there is no other way to get the electricity to the houses because everything is so old school.
Mhm.
Like
Mm.
that's a
Mhm.
good thing and a bad thing at the same time. The good thing about good modern infrastructure is that you have proper grounding of the electrical systems, you have better wiring, you have more safety, even though you've got like more, higher EMFs and so on. But this was very hard on our body, and we felt it in our biology, like very, very much,
Mhm.
that the environment did not feel restorative, even though we were grounding every day and being in the sun all the time. And
Mm.
so it felt like our body was constantly being electrocuted by, or zapped the energy from giving you that electrical field, the
Mm.
magnetic field that exists from the bad wiring. And also the houses themselves, like here in Cyprus, one beautiful thing that we have on the wall, the plug has a switch where if you turn the switch off, the electricity stops coming to the socket.
That's
But
amazing.
in Costa Rica, you don't have that option, right? So you just got the plug, so that the electricity is constantly running through it, but you've got no option to turn it off. And so
Mm.
the electric field is massive. And
Yeah.
there was many cell towers around and everything like this. So
Mhm.
we didn't necessarily feel that the environment was so optimal for us, for like long-term living. Of course, we could have searched more areas, but we were so fried from all the flying and the traveling and trying to figure things out that, we were just we didn't have the battery, the capacity to give more energy, to stay there, to be honest. So we came back here and instantly our body felt at ease. So it's kind of crazy, really,
Yeah.
Are you
that
guys
happened.
planning to stay in Cyprus, or are you thinking
Yeah,
about trying out another area in the future?
well, definitely setting a base here, more of a foundation, and maybe traveling, in the future to places, but not actually living there. So I think we have kind of decided that this is a perfect place to be, as long as we embrace seasonality, and that's something that we did embrace so much before. We thought that it's best to go away for the winter to somewhere sunny, because while we
Mm.
were away in Costa Rica, it was more winter here. So we
Right.
thought it's better if we are in constant summer, but actually no, I was proven wrong and Tina was proven wrong. And so we actually feel better being exposed to the cold and having that seasonality change, because clearly your body is designed to experience that. It's not
Mm.
designed to experience continuous summer unless that's where you are born. Like, let's say you're born in
Yes.
Egypt or somewhere where the weather is quite hot and
Mhm.
warm all the time.
I
Mhm.
love this because some people say like you can't heal where you got sick, and I don't agree with that. I think
Yeah.
there's a way to heal even if you got sick in that particular locale. What do you guys?
Yes,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's all this bio individuality, like you said before, right? We can't just make general recommendations like everybody should move to the equator. Nah, maybe you won't feel as good there. The different
No.
environments work for different people. And that's true with, as Heather and I are both homeopaths, like there are people and constitutions that do really bad in like humid weather. Like even from that kind of
Yeah.
standpoint. So
Yeah.
there are different people who just don't do well. Certain people who don't do well in dry weather. There are some people who don't do well in cold weather, or cold, damp
Uh-huh.
weather. So it really depends
Yes.
on
Yes.
you and your body and where you feel the best. And, I would
Absolutely.
always recommend if you're thinking about moving somewhere, like take a trip there and see how you actually feel in that environment
Mm.
before you actually make that huge decision, because you might not feel
Mm.
as good. And then of course there's the non-native EMFs and all the other things are going to come in, into contact, into play. But yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
it's individualized.
If we never went there, we would have never have known, and we would have always
Yeah.
wanted to go to that area of the world, and that would have drawn us there. Now
Mm-hmm.
that I went, I know that for a fact I don't want to live there long term,
Right.
maybe just for travels, for holiday. It's completely different when you're on a holiday and you can just chill and just do like nice things and not think about daily life. Of course, we
Yeah.
were moving, we took our whole life with us, everything was in a suitcase. We didn't have anything
Yeah.
back here. So we
Wow.
basically left Cyprus, we sold everything. We went there, we were only in 2 suitcases, and we
Mhm.
basically came back that way. And that was fine because we got rid of a lot of clutter as well. That was like a really nice thing.
You did a
Cleanse.
cleanse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a cleanse. I like that. I like
yeah. And
Wow.
we've done that so many times over the years, because when we were studying in Scotland together, me and Tina, that's where we met each other. And then we were doing the nutrition degree there. And we decided that we don't want to only do nutrition, but we want to also specialize in movement. So we applied for movement sciences in the Netherlands. So we moved to the Netherlands. We
Oh,
did our master's degree there. After that, we decided, okay, where do we want to live in the world after our master's is over? We thought, okay, maybe Cyprus, maybe Finland. I don't know. I'd never been to Finland. I never lived there. So I thought, okay, maybe it's nice. So we went and lived there for 3 years. We lived in Finland.
wow.
And then after Finland, that's where Tina is from. And basically then we moved from there to Cyprus for 1.5 years. Then after 1.5 years, we moved to Costa Rica for 3 months. And now we're back here.
Hmm.
So
Well, you've been on had a journey of all different
Yeah.
places and been to a lot of, which is great. I think that's awesome. You got to live in a lot of different environments and experience a lot of different places and all that.
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
ask you also, like, so do you feel nutrition is really bio-individual as well? Or do you think that an animal-based, approach is really the way for people to go?
Oh, that's quite a tough question. Well, it is bio-individual in the sense of how much like energy a person needs, or maybe what kind of diet does a person handle best, whether that is more higher carb or lower
Mhm.
or higher fat, because there are some individuals who actually can't tolerate high fat diets.
Mhm.
And the reason being is because their liver is more lazy, right? And their liver cannot like process so much fat. And so when you give those individuals more fat, they feel nauseous or they don't
Mhm.
feel well. And so then you have to like meet everybody where they're at. So I still advocate for an animal-based diet for sure, 100%, because I've noticed massive improvements in my health since switching to that diet. And I was eating before, I wouldn't say animal-based when I was doing more like bodybuilding. Before I went plant-based, I was eating like a bodybuilding style diet, but it was very like classic bodybuilding style diet, like rice, chicken, broccoli, no fats, it was very dry, stagnant, gross. And I was just forcing it down. And I mean, it works if you have a physique goal. But there are actually now over the years, I've learned that you can get the same outcomes by doing it way more wise. So it's just all about the total energy intake and calculating a person's demands and how much protein they actually need for their body and so on. So yeah, it is very bio-individual. You need to understand also the location of the individual, or like, what type of fruits are they eating, or eating any fruits in general, and vegetables. And if you live somewhere where fruits and vegetables don't grow, then obviously you shouldn't be eating them, because nature didn't intend that for your biology, especially if that's where you are from. So, for example, one thing that Tina has noticed is in Finland, normally in the cold, then nothing grows. So that means that you only eat meat, right? You should be only eating meat and fish. But here, she doesn't handle fruits very well. And it's very interesting, even though we are in an environment where your body should be able to handle fruits because of the higher UV, the grounding, and everything like this. Because our biology is wired to live in a Finnish environment, her metabolism and her mitochondrial function is based on that. And so even though if she eats fruits here, she doesn't feel as optimal than whether like compared to eating more of a strict carnivore style diet. So she's very, very high fat. She eats around 3,000, 3,500 calories per day, but her body is absolutely thriving, and her mitochondrial function is through the roof because of that, because she's a very good metabolizer of fats. Whereas in these countries where I'm from, like I do better with slightly lower fat and a little bit more higher carb, because that's where I'm born. I believe that's the reason. And that's just, how my biology is designed.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. That's very interesting. Yeah. So as we're heading towards the end here, like what do you want to, leave the listeners with? What are you, excited to share with them about? Anything you're working on, tips you want to share with people? Anything like that, we'd love to hear.
Okay, so I think what's very important is if we address the most important things that people can take away from this podcast, right? And they can start to change things in their life today already, and that they are free. So the number one thing is start to decrease the amount of stress that you have in your stress bucket, and also your toxin load as well. So if you start to minimize those things, all the things that are adding stress to your body, which are the non-native electromagnetic fields, which come from all electrical devices, phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, basically electricity in general, it's frying us in general. So if you reduce your exposure to indoor living and gadget use, you're winning. If you then like minimize your blue light, which is white light, if normal person, who doesn't understand what blue light is all these modern LED lights or any light which is devoid of infrared and the full spectrum of light. Those are causing a lot of stress to the body. They're causing a lot of harm, specifically after the sun has set, and is very, very disruptive to our hormones. So if we want to regulate our melatonin and our sleep and our overall hormone profile, because that has its own circadian rhythm, then we have to make sure that the light is appropriate after sunset. So we can switch to more red type of light in the evening. Third thing is the type of products that we use in our homes, like fragrances, cleaning products, personal care products, and hand sanitizers, all this kind of stuff, perfumes, all the modern stuffs that human has created. We need to avoid it at all costs and try and swap it with natural choices as much as possible if we actually need to use them. And, just try and not stress in general about, all of these things that I mentioned. So if you actually stress too much about these above things, it will do probably just as much harm as being exposed to those things. Because,
Yep.
there's one thing where they say that ignorance is bliss, in a way that actually sometimes when you're doing something harmful and you don't know that it's harmful, it actually doesn't do you as much harm as knowing that it's harmful to you.
Yep.
Such truth. Such truth. Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my clients, I'm like, just go slow, like, especially with like personal care products, because that took me years to switch all my personal care products to really holistic things. As soon as something would run out, I'd say, okay, I'm not buying that anymore. And I'd make a better choice, So over time now, all my products in my home are extremely clean, but it takes time, that's something you can't just throw everything you have out and then buy all new. That'll be really
Yeah.
stressful. So yeah, I
Yeah,
like
and expensive too, like
yeah.
if you're buying everything from the beginning, if you're just throwing away full bottles of things, you kind of feel like, oh my God, like so much money wasted, but it's worth it in the end, because the more you
Yes.
do it over time, you realize your health
Yes.
is the most precious thing that exists. You cannot necessarily buy yourself into health. You have to gain it through days, weeks, and years of, putting good habits into practice. And that's like another thing which I wanted to leave the listeners with is try to build like healthy habits and routines that take you towards health, because there is no such thing as maintenance health. There is either optimal health or there is disease. There is no middle ground. And what do I mean by that? That every single act that you do either takes you towards optimal health or it either takes you towards disease. So always remember that. And always like observe and be aware of what you're doing in your daily life, like the way that you breathe, the way that you sit, the way that your eyes are moving, the way that what type of light you are exposed to, the way that you exercise, all of these things. If you question yourself in the moment, is this optimal or is it actually harmful for me? Then you can make better decisions, but it all starts with awareness of self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's fabulous advice, right? Just be in our animal body and what is your body doing in the context it's in, right? And how are you perceiving of yourself in the world so that you get the mental, emotional in there as well, and
Yeah.
keep that stress level low and keep it reasonable, whatever your nervous system can manage to make change and to be within any given moment. And then your capacity as you make these changes will grow for making good choices and the ability to do more things that help your body become healthier. So I love that.
Yeah.
So what are your goals
Yeah.
for the future? What grand plans do you have, or any aspirations, fantasies?
I have so many goals. Oh my God. But like, I guess
Love it.
I would say like a near term goal would be to build something, like more of a online programs, ready-made programs for people to purchase. So that would be more like, body weight programs, which are ready made so people can actually like follow along and do things at home. So they can do it like in a good environment as well. So they can just use their body to move. And of course, I'm looking forward to building as well more lifestyle approach courses as well, like ready-made programs, video courses where people can watch through and they can listen and apply all these things that I just talked about lifestyle. So I will tell them, if you have this light bulb, switch to this one. If you have this product, switch to this one. And it's going to be a very simple approach. And then I'm going to tell you why you're going to do it and why it's important to do it. So this is something that I would love to, get down to doing in the very near future. And then in the very, very, well, not so very far away, I believe that I want to start my own podcast at one point as well. So
Nice.
I love it.
Awesome. Those are great goals. And we look forward to both of those things,
Yes.
seeing these things that you do, that you'd be amazing at both. So amazing. So tell
thank you
people
so much.
yeah, you're welcome. Tell people where they can find you and learn more about your work and connect with you.
Cool. So you can find me like on my website. So my website has all my services on there. You can read a little bit about everything that I offer, which is mobility-fitness.com. And you can find all of my movement inspiration on YouTube and on Instagram. So on YouTube, you will find a little bit more detailed explanation where I actually talk to the camera. So, on Instagram, it's more this, we've all got this like fish attention span, which is like less than 5-10 seconds. So this is why, how the algorithm works. If you are putting out valuable content or a valuable caption where you're trying to educate people, you cannot put very long videos where you're explaining and so on, because your views will be less, your saves will be less, your shares will be less, so your content will not be pushed out. So on Instagram, you'll find more teaser-like content, which is like still very informative, but it's still like getting you straight to the point. Whereas on my YouTube channel, I'm diving, I'm explaining things in a bit more detail, and I'm looking forward to doing even more longer type format on my YouTube channel, and eventually monetizing my YouTube channel. So that's all the things that I'm working on. So my YouTube is Movement Specialist Andreas altogether. And my Instagram is Andreas_David_Christou. So that's where people can find.
Awesome. We'll include all that in the show notes for everybody so they can go out and find you and follow you and, delve into all your information. So yeah, that'll be great. So yes,
Thank
we
you.
greatly appreciate, yeah, of course, absolutely. We follow along too. So we greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wisdom and knowledge and, with everybody, with our audience. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Andreas, thank you
you
very,
so
very much.
Yes.
Thank you for having me, guys. And it was such a pleasure because it's so nice to speak with like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
And one thing which is nice is that we all share similar values, and I guess with values also comes boundary setting. That's something that we didn't get into at all, but
Right.
this is like another podcast in itself.
Yeah. But a very important one, and that's all about health. And I don't think people they don't realize how much boundaries for ourselves and then the boundaries we set with others impacts our health in every way. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Next time, to be continued, right? We might have to do another show on that.
Absolutely.
On the next episode.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.